Officials are warning of a major funding gap ahead in England's NHS budget.
The union has proposed 3 dates in December to strike. 2 days would involve full walkouts.
Colchester General Hospital has been put under special measures and the police have been alerted.
Insufficient funding.
A staff morale crisis.
Sustained pressure.
They've been all over the news, junior doctors striking over new contracts that they believe will lower their pay and increase their hours. Here at Ealing, these doctors are battling a 1% pay cut, yet the most recent annual report shows that this NHS trust is willing to spend over £300,000 on interim managers alone. When an NHS trust finds itself in financial trouble, health regulator Monitor puts it into special measures and hires an interim to turn it around. These interims take the top position of Chief Executive or Director of Finance. It's common for the Trust to pay these interims hundreds of thousands of pounds for just a few months' work. One Chief Executive was even paid £185,000 for just 12 weeks. I wanted to know how many trusts had employed interims around the country, so I sent Freedom of Information requests to everyone. In the end, I found at least 50 trusts who had hired interim managers for over 300 positions over the past 5 years. That number is likely to be much higher because some refuse to disclose the information. One trust, Norfolk and Suffolk NHS, hired a total of 56 interim managers. That cost the trust nearly £2 million. Yorkshire Ambulance Service paid the highest salary per month to Keith Pryor. He was there for 3 months and received £180,000 for his services. The average salary, a staggering £13,700 per month. That's £165,000 a year. The average stay for an interim was just under 6 months. Jeremy Tozer, however, was only at King's College Hospital for 1 week. Some interims move from trust to trust every few months. Just look at this one. Andy Morris is currently an interim management consultant at Wirral University Trust. Before this post, he was at Colchester, Royal Basildon and Berkshire as an interim, and that's not the half of it. Hi, is that Managers in Partnership? Could I speak to John Restall, please? Managers in Partnership is a trade union that represents NHS managers. It has members in trusts across the country, as well as Monitor and NHS England. John Restall is their chief executive, and I went along to his office to speak to him about why interim managers are able to command such high salaries. Richard Bourne was the chairman of Colchester Hospital, but he was removed in 2009 by Monitor and replaced with an interim. I sat down with him to talk about his experience.
The attitude of the regulator changed very suddenly, became very bullying, very interfering, very direct, and it became very difficult. I think very few people with the capability of being a chief executive or a finance director would actually take the job. Because, the culture they're working under is horrendous. Everyone that you talk to at the moment who's been in the NHS for any length of time will tell you this is the worst it has ever been.
What Richard said about Colchester's problems made me interested in Monitor's hiring and firing role. So I emailed them asking how they choose interims and if they accepted some responsibility for the high salaries they command. I then rang them and emailed them again, but got no response. Not satisfied with Monitor's response, I decided to turn up at a conference at the King's Fund. Last year, they published a report on leadership vacancies in the NHS, which heavily criticised Monitor's role in the use of interim management. It was difficult finding people to speak to, but eventually one NHS leader agreed to speak to me off the record. We've used an actor to read out what he said.
Monitor is in a position where it has to make sure the hospital sector is stable. They've also got legislative accountability and responsibility. You can't run a trust without having someone at the helm. What is a problem is that the people who choose interims aren't choosing them from the wider pool of the NHS. They're drawing them from external bodies, like recruitment agencies.
The situation is worse than I thought. How can it be solved? I spoke to Dr. Keith McNeill, former CEO of Addenbrooke's Hospital, via Skype from Australia. Keith became so disillusioned with the management crisis that he hasn't taken another job in the NHS since he resigned. some interims are charging quite high prices, and obviously they are, there are gaps that need to be filled. Do you think that some interims are sort of exploiting the gaps in the NHS to make as much money as they can for themselves?
It depends on how you look at it. I mean, from the health system's point of view, when it's under such financial pressures, you would say, my goodness, that's very expensive, isn't it? How can we afford that, and how can people morally justify that? On the other hand, these people, everybody's in business. I mean, it's a market economy, isn't it? And basically, you pay the price, the going price. It's like real estate, it's like anything.
It seems that we can't solve the problem of interims without solving the more deeply rooted issues within the NHS. Nobody wants to take the top jobs permanently, so whatever your views on these interim managers, it seems that Trust will have to continue paying their high salaries for the time being. Emma Supple, City News.